What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another Shopify tutorial. In today's coding session, I will show you how do you go about building an email marketing application with Shopify and Remix. And we're going to sharpen our skills in Shopify app development, learning how to set up and use webhooks, how to use the Shopify billing API, and a few other things. So if you enjoyed today's tutorial, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, just hit me up in the comments down below. So let's just start with the tutorial.
So let's start by opening the terminal and create our new application. First, I'm going to just navigate to my desktop and we're going to click our command npm init Shopify app latest to generate our Remix project. We can proceed and start naming the application. I'm just going to name it marketing. Here we are going to go ahead and proceed with Remix, and I'm going to use TypeScript for this project. Wait for the dependencies to be installed by the Shopify CLI. In the meantime, I'm just going to fast forward this part. Once the CLI has successfully generated our project, let's just navigate to the project itself. So let's just marketing, cd marketing, and I can run the command npm run dev, and we can just wait for the CLI to create it as a new project. You can go ahead and type yes. Let's name it marketing. You can go ahead and type yes here as well. And after a few steps, the CLI is going to give us our link, and we can go ahead and copy this link and open it in the browser. So I'm going to go ahead and open my browser here. Let me expand my window and open a new tab and copy and paste this part here, and we can go ahead and install the application. And as you guys see, thanks to the Shopify CLI, we have generated this Remix project. Let me pin the application here, and now we are ready to open our project in VS Code. So let's minimize the browser again, and we can go ahead and open VS Code and open our project there. So I'm going to navigate there. Okay, I will expand the window so we have more visual. I will go ahead to the routes folder, and we can start by cleaning the project a little bit. So I will just delete a few things here. Let's go ahead and open our first file, which is going to be this one, and this is just our application embedded sidebar, which is provided by us by Shopify. So we're just going to have a few changes here. Our application essentially is going to have 4 pages. I'm just going to delete the additional page here. Just grab and delete this page first. I'm going to go ahead here, and we can remove the, well, we're not going to remove it. We're going to just copy and paste it 4 more times, and I'm going to change a few names. Our second page is going to be our campaign page. We can just rename it to campaigns. Our next page is going to be our automations page, so let's name it automations. And our 4th page is going to be our billing page, so we can name it billings. Let's go ahead and rename the URL paths as well. So this one is going to be campaigns, this one is going to be automations, and this one is going to be billings. And we can proceed and create these pages, okay? And this is one of the great things about Remix. This is where you define all your routes. At least in my opinion, the project structure ends up being a little bit more cleaner and easier to maintain. So this one is going to be for campaigns, and we can just create a React component here. So type TS to bring up the auto completion, and we can name it campaigns here. Let's just save changes and do the same thing for the next pages. Once you have finished creating the 4 pages that we have right here, just make sure the name of your pages matches the name of the URL right here, because that's how Remix loops through this folder and finds your page, okay? Now we can go to the home page, which is this index right here, and we are going to just clean everything here. We can start by importing our Polaris page and just change the name here to home. Let's save changes. I'm going to minimize everything and see if our application is still running and nothing has been broken. So let me minimize here and go ahead and advance to the browser. I'm going to refresh and see if we have any changes here. We should have 4 pages. Let's expand this part. And yes, we have our home page, we have our campaigns page, we have our automations page, and we have our billings page. So this is going to be the structure of our project. Now we can start by focusing on the first feature of our application, which is going to be the campaigns page. So let's go back to VS Code. We can go ahead and close all these windows here, and we are going to start right here. So let's start working in our JSX, and the first thing that we're going to do is import the page component from Polaris library, and we're going to create a tab bar. So we're going to need a few components to create this structure. So let's go ahead and delete this bar, and we can follow along. We're going to need a layout component. Then inside the layout component, let's create a few sections. Let's let's type section here, let's close it, and inside here we're going to use another component which is called the inline grid. We're going to have 2 columns for this grid. Close the grid, and inside here let's create a text, and we're going to name it campaigns. The text needs 2 props, so the first prop is going to be variant. Now let's make sure this text comes from Polaris, so let me just copy and paste it and put it right here. So next to the heading of our page, let's put a button here, and let's just name create new. Let's save the document. Let's create another layout section, so copy and paste here and close the section again. I'm going to use the legacy car component from Polaris, and inside here is where we are going to create our tab bars. So I'm going to first import the tab bar component from Polaris. I'm going to close it, and we're going to need a few props. The first thing that we need is to create a list of objects that will be representing our screens, okay? So above here we can go ahead and create this list. So let's name it tabs, and it's going to be a list of objects, and it's going to have a few properties. The first one is going to be the ID. Let's name it all customers. The second one is going to be the content. The third one is going to be the panel ID. Next one is going to be the component, and this is the screen that it's going to take us after we click on the tab. So let's do a test. So let's create another folder in our application, and inside here let's just create a test component. Let's do it really quick here. Test component. Test, let's name it component. I'm gonna save the changes, grab the name, and go ahead and put the component right here. Okay, now we need to pass this list as a prop in our component, so let's name it tabs, and here we're going to drill this into it. As you guys see, if you hover over this component and it's a few other properties, now we need to create the state of our component. So let's initialize a state variable selected with the initial value of 0 using the useState hook. Also, let's initialize a function setSelected to update the selected state. So let's create those. Const selected and set selected function. Okay, and we can use our useState hook right here. Let's initialize to 0. Now let's define a memoized version of our selected state by using the useCallback hook. So I'm going to create another function right here. So let's call it handle tab change, and let's use our useCallback hook right here. It's going to take an arrow function inside, and here we are going to call our setSelectedState, and we're going to pass it from our arrow function. Let's call this property selected tab index, and it's going to be of a type number, okay? And we can pass this into our function. Next, we need to pass an empty array as the second parameter. Now we can pass our missing properties to our tabs component. So let's define our initial selected state as the selected state, and let's define our selected function. So on select, we are going to pass our handle tab change function. Let's create a legacy car section. So section here, and close the section, and inside here we are going to pass the component of our list according to our state. So let's grab the selected state from our tab list and the property component, and inside our section here let's pass the title. Let's save the changes, refactor our code, and let's go to the browser to see the changes. So this is our screen for now, and as you guys see, we only have one tab. Everything's working perfectly. Let's go back. We're going to need a few other tabs, so I'm just going to go here, put a comma, and copy and paste the other tabs here, and let me go to the browser to see if I can see the tabs and the navigation. Yep, everything seems to be working fine, so we can go back. And something that we can do here to clean our code a little bit, I'm just going to export this list and put it in another screen, okay guys? So I'm going to open the file tree, and I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm just going to call it utils. So our code looks cleaner this way. Okay guys, so now that we have finished with our campaigns tab bars, we are going to move on to the next part. We're going to create a mural or a popover that's going to appear on the screen after we click on this button right here. So I'm just gonna go to my file tree one more time, and I'm going to click on the routes folder, and I'm going to create a new file. We're going to call it create campaign form, and let's name it create campaign form. Okay, so let's start as before, and I'm going to switch this as a page component component from Polaris, and we're going to need the frame and the modal components from Shopify Polaris as well to create this effect. It's really simple, guys. I'm going to wrap this page in parentheses actually, so let me just refactor this page one more time. Below the page, let's call the frame component from Polaris, let's close brackets, and inside here I'm going to create the modal, so call the modal component and close it, and inside here we're going to have a modal section, and below our modal we're going to have our modal section. Okay, so call it modal.section. Next, we're going to need a couple of props for this component. First of all, we're going to need the state as the activator. So let's go to the top of the component and create our state. So as usual, we're just going to need our activate and our set activate function using a set state hook. So let's create those. Next, let's define a function to toggle the activate state. So let's create a const handle change variable right here, and that's going to be using our use callback hook just like before. It takes an anonymous function, and here we can call our set activate state function. Here just pass the reverse state, and it's another param, so just put a comma, put a square brackets, and we have to pass our state since that's what's going to be dependent on. So let me pass that right here, and that's it. Now we need to use this. Now we need to have our activator for modal, and the activator is just gonna be a button. So let's call it activator. It's going to be equal to a Polaris button. Okay, let's close this button and let's name it, open it. Okay, and here we have to pass the prop on click, which is going to be our function right here, handle change. Pass it to our model like this. The next prop that we're going to have is the open prop, gonna be our state. We also need the unclose prop, so let's pass all our handle change function here. So let's pass a title here, and we can name create a new email campaign. Next, we need a primary action and a secondary action, which are just two buttons. So let me just create that really quick. Let's save the changes. Now let's work on our modal section, which is going to be the actual popover that's going to appear on screen. So here we're going to need a couple of things. First, we are going to use a form, which is going to come from our Remix library, not from Polaris, be careful. So let's create a layout, and we're going to call our text field. Let's pass in a few props. Let's pass the label. The label here is going to be campaign name. Let's pass a value, which is going to be a state value, which we'll create in 1 second. Let's pass the onChange function, which is going to be the same. So let's call it handle change text. Let's pass another props as well, and autocomplete, let's set it up to off. Okay guys, so this is going to be our two states. Let's go back up to the top of the component. Below here we can create those two properties, so we can just copy and paste these two states above here, and we can just rename them. So now let's go below, and I'm going to copy and paste these 4 more times, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we can, let me refactor this code, and this text field is going to be our email subject, and I think we're going to need one more, so we're just testing for now, so it's okay. So let's create another text field, and I'm going to type content. Let's save the changes, and I'm going to use the same state for all these text fields just for now, guys. So below here, I'm going to need a button that will submit the form. So let's create a button, and let's type send here. Okay, let's refactor our code. Okay guys, so now that we're done here, I want to test this component. So let me go to the top of the file, and I'm going to grab the name, and we need to import this file in one of our screens. So let's go back to our campaign component. Let's go all the way down, and we're going to have, yes, we're going to have to create a new section. So oops, let me delete this part. Let me put this component and wrap it inside a section. Let me wrap this, copy and paste this part again, and let's import this component. We're just testing. I just want to see that popover is working properly. Save changes. Let's go back to the browser. Let's go back here. Let me open my browser, and this is our screen. Click on open, and the model is working perfectly. So this is going to be the submission form that we're going to use to create an email campaign and send it to all our users in our Shopify store. So great, perfect, it's working. Let me close it. And we're going to refactor this a little bit. This model is going to appear automatically, so we have to fix this, right? So let's close it and let's go back to our VS Code. I want to do something first. Let's go to the top of the component. Here we are going to need to use our action method in order to submit our form, okay? So this action method comes from Remix. This is the method that we use to submit forms to the server, okay? For now, it's going to be empty. Let's go back inside our component, and we're going to need a few things. We're going to need this submit hook from Remix as well. So let's call it out. We're going to need our use action data hook. Now we can create the function to send the emails. So let's create this function, and let's create an arrow function to use our submit hook, okay? So call submit here, and we're going to take an empty object first and then another object which is going to have our submission properties. So first replace true, and then the method is going to be a post method. Now let's grab this send email method and inject it into our button. I made a little mistake here. We need to grab this part right here in our action method and change it and switch it to our create campaign file where our form is actually. Sorry about that, guys. And we're going to paste it right here. We are going to need to import everything again. Let's grab our action method, and let me go back here. I'm going to put it here. Let's import it as well. Let's refactor this import, and let me remove the unnecessary imports from the other file. Okay, everything's ready, and as we were before, let's send emails, and we are going to replace this for this action. And this action data, we're going to use it to test our function. So I'm just going to I'm going to put a console.log, and we're going to log everything in the console. Okay, perfect. Let's save the changes. This needs to be false by default, and this will fix the problem. But something else I want to pass this state from our parent component, so this one right here, so the campaign page. So what I'm going to do basically is I'm going to go up here, I'm going to copy and paste these types, which I'm going to drill into my component. Let me grab the state from here, go back to my app campaign, and I'm going to paste it here. Okay, I'm going to go back, and now I need to pass these props into my component. So let's go to my component here. I'm going to paste this par, so a nose is going to be waiting for these two types, and I'm going to pass the activate prop and also this set activate prop. Okay, that's it. We save the changes, and now we need to fix this from our parent component. So here it should have autocomplete. Let's click on this part. What happened? So this one is going to be activate, and this long as function, let me delete all these boilerplate. So set activate. We can save the changes, and let's test this really quick. I'm going to go to the browser again, and let me expand this part. So this is our application, and we have our button right here, and when we click we have this pop-up, and this is our form. So the application is working perfectly. So now let's just go back. Okay, now let me close this, and we're going to work on our action function. Now the next thing that we need to do, we need to install two libraries that will help us create our email marketing application. As an email marketing application, we need two requirements. The first one is that we need a template engine, and the second one is that we need to send emails. The first one that we're going to use is React Email, that will help us generate email templates. This is the official website, and you can see all the documentation right here. I will go to examples, and you can can see that we already have examples made for us, so we only need to install this library. We can use all these examples to use as custom templates for our application. And the second library is Resend, that will help us with our functionality to send emails to our customers. This is my application. You're going to need to sign up for the application, and just as the other library, you can check out the documentation if you want to go into more details. I will show you the basic configuration for the two of them right now. Now let's go back to VS Code and install these libraries. So I will press Ctrl+Backticks to open my terminal. I will click ls to see my file location, and right here I'm going to install these libraries using npm package manager. So npm install Resend. I'm also going to use React email, and we also need React email components. Okay, now let's type enter and wait for the dependencies to install into our project. Perfect, everything is installed. I'm going to close the terminal. I'm just gonna go to my package.json to make sure we install the libraries. So Resend is right here, React emails, and we have React email components. Okay, so let's go back to our project and keep working. I'm going to create a new folder called emails, and this is where I'm going to store my templates. So now let me show you how do you create a basic template. Let me create a new template. Let's type new.tsx, create a custom component. So let's export a function email new, and this one is going to take our props, and the prop that we're going to pass here. And as props you can pass many things. All right, so let's do an example, and let's say that we are going to pass a URL that's going to be a type any just for this example. And here let's grab the URL. All right, let's destructure it. URL that will come from our props. Now we need to create the UI, so return, and here we're going to use components from our React email library. All right, so type HTML, and that will be imported from React components. I think the library needs to be HTML right here, and this is a basic HTML template, and we have also a button. Let me type button here, and this not. And just make sure it doesn't come from React Polaris. That's my mistake. Let's put it here. I need to come from button. Okay. And this button, let's pass the href, which is going to be our URL. And let's close the button, and we can type just click me. Click me. And this is the basic syntax of how you create custom template. You can have as many templates as you want here, which could potentially be the options that you present your users at the time when you choose a template for the marketing campaign. Okay, so let me save the changes, and let's go back to my create campaign form, and we can get started with our action function. All right, let me close the file tree, and here we are going to use our Resend library. Okay, so I'm just gonna put a console log to make sure this function is working. So let's put a hit here. So once you import Resend, you are going to need to pass an API key in order to be able to use this API. The way that you create this is from the admin side. So let me minimize the browser, and I'll show you. But once you have an account with Resend, go to the API key section, and you're going to create an API key for your new project, and grab the private API key, and I'll pass it. So I'm going to minimize this browser. I'm going to go back, and right here we are going to pass this key. I'm just gonna pass it directly here. What you really want to do in this case is create an environment variable to make sure this is secure. So now we can use this object, and we are going to call this object here, which is an asynchronous call. We're going to call resend.emails.send. Okay, and here is going to take an object with a few properties. We are going to destructure the result of this object, which is going to have data or an error. Okay, so let me type those. And now as for the properties, we are going to need the from, and we are going to need our HTML content. So you can potentially pass any HTML here, but that's the main reason we are using this React email library, so we can facilitate this process for us. So I'm just going to grab this template, and instead of passing just raw HTML, I'm going to import this template here, and we need to pass a URL. So let's pass this URL. Let's just pass anything here. We're just testing this part. So we are getting an error here from TypeScript, and the way that we solve this is really simple. We have a function that's provided to us by React email, which is called render, so we just have to use it. So let me type const email HTML equal to render, which comes from here. Oops, I think it has to be from, just make sure you import it right, from React components, and you're going to pass your, and here's where we are going to pass our component. Okay, so, and now we can use this email HTML right here. Okay guys, so moving on, let's handle our error. If we have any error here, we are going to return a JSON object with the error. Okay, so let's make sure we import this from Remix, and here we're going to pass our error here, and let's pass a status code of 400. Okay, and if we have a good response, oops, and if we have a good response, let's return the same as JSON object, that with the difference that we're gonna have a 200 response. Okay, so successful 200, and we can pass our data here. Now we are going to need a from email. So for the subject, let's type hello YouTube. So the email that you use to send, it has to be an email with a custom domain, or you could use the email provided by Resend to test this, but I wouldn't recommend using this email too much. It could get potentially flagged from your email provider. Still, we're just gonna use it one or twice in this tutorial. So onboarding. Okay, so this is the email that's provided to us by Resend, and here you need to provide the email that you use to create the account with Resend. Okay, for testing purposes, you need to pass an array here because you could potentially send an email to many people, which is the point of our application. I'm just going to type this off camera. So, okay guys, so we are almost ready to test our function, and just remember that we are going to use this template as our testing template. Okay, but let me go back to my browser, and I want to show you a custom template. I want to show you custom templates that we could potentially use. So you just have to go to here, so you just have to go to the browser here, and in examples, and inside the documentation you're going to go to examples here, and you can find the examples for the templates that you want to use, and you have the source code right here, which is pretty cool. I'm just going to go to my test store and make sure everything's working. Let me open the terminal, so let me console the log this part and see what's going on here. So let me type create new, and it should work after we send the message here. So if you guys get this error, which means is we need to pass a prop in our remix component, which is basically the path of the form. So let me minimize and show you how you fix this. Here, let's go back in this part, and inside this form we are going to pass a few props. So this is the one I'm talking about. You need to specify the action, and the action is going to be the location of your form. So we have this form right here, okay, in the location /app/ create campaign form. Okay, so specify that, create campaign. Just make sure it matches the name of your file, and we're going to pass a few other things. All right, so I'm going to pass the method, which is a post, and also I'm going to pass the onSubmit to this form to make sure we don't have any errors, and the function is send emails, if I'm correct. Yes, it's send emails. Let's save the changes, and let's go back to the browser and try that again. So inside our store, let's open our development tools to see what's going on in the console, and I'm going to click on the form, and right here let's click our send button to see what happens. And we had a response from the server. This is the data that we got. So I'm pretty sure we got an email. So if I go, so I'm here in my Gmail account, and this is the response that we have. And as you guys see, we had an email, which is pretty cool. Now let me show you the custom templates, because I want to use one of these. This is the one I want to use. Display these templates in the application and dynamically pass the values, right? So just copy and paste the source code. Okay, so here in our emails folder, let's create a new component, and let's type custom. Here I'm just going to copy and paste my email. Let me make this bigger. Let me save changes here, and this is the email that we want to display in our application before sending. It's pretty similar to what we did before. Again, if you need any reference to this, just go to the documentation and you'll see the syntax and all the components this amazing library provides to you. I'm just going to copy the name of the component, and I'm gonna go to my here. Let's create a layout section below this one. Layout section. Oops, and I'm going to copy and paste my component. Right, let's import the component. Let's save changes and let's see if we have a visual in our application, in our browser. So let me go to my campaigns. Let's create here. And yes, as you guys can see, this is the custom template. And something cool that we could do here is we could have a list of these templates and have the user choose them dynamically before sending these campaigns. So they can choose or modify the whatever template they want. That's how usually these kind of applications work. So let me minimize again and let's go back, and I'll show you how you can pass the values manually. But if you're familiar with React, you've done this before. At the end of the day, this is just a custom component. So right here, this invitation was intended for, let's delete this part and type content here, and let's go back to our component and let's create a new property, content. Now that we have the type, let's pass this content here. So content. Let me save the changes. Now let's go back to my component, which is this one right here, right? So we can type content and dynamically, and here we are going to pass the value of our text field content, which is going to be this one. But that's how you can pass this value. So let me save changes. Now I'm going to go ahead and create the other feature of our applications, which is going to be the automations. For this functionality, we're going to use webhooks from Shopify in order to create an automation. Okay, so let's do it. Okay guys, so let me close all these files and we're going to set up our hooks. Let me show you this automation that we're going to create. I'm going to use the webhook on create user. So what I'm basically going to do, we're going to send an email automatically every time a user is created. So we're going to create this automation using webhooks. Let me type here, send email when user is created. All right, so let's go to our Shopify server and set up our hooks. It's this one right here. Let me close the file tree, and on here on webhooks is where we are going to start. So below this app, uninstall webhook, which is the first webhook that comes by default with Shopify. Let's just copy and paste it. Hold on, and then rename it to create user. Let's rename the hook to customers create. So let me add a callback function here to test this hook. Is going to be an asynchronous function, and let's pass a few things. We can pass a topic, and let's console log this to test. Okay, let me grab the payload as well. Console. Just for testing purposes, I'm going to console log the payload to see if we have a response from the server, right? Let me save these changes. Now we need to go to our hooks file right here and work on the logic of our webhook. So just below here, let's add another case. So we can copy and paste this bar right here. And let me see, what was the name? It's customers create. I'm just gonna grab it from here so I don't have any mistakes. Let me go back to my webhooks. So now let's put a console log here, and this console log is going to be again hit webhook. Okay, again guys, let's just console log the payload. And here is the automation that we're going to create. Let's go to the file tree. Let me go to my campaigns to create campaigns here. And we're going to grab the same code because this is basically what we're going to do, but after the event is triggered. So let's copy this code and below here we can paste it. And okay guys, and once you imported the necessary files, just save the changes and just make sure, don't forget to put your email here. Now let's go back to the automations page and we're going to keep working on our logic. We are going to need an action function again, so let me go back to my, I'm going to copy a bit of the code from my campaign here and let me paste everything. Let me delete everything here. Now we are going to trigger the webhook here. Okay, so essentially this is going to be the function. Every time a user creates an automation object, we are going to create a webhook in the system, and that's what's going to create a user every time a user signs up. And when the customer of our application decides to delete this automation object, the webhook is going to be deleted from the application as well. So how do we accomplish this? We need to access our admin, so let me type authenticate from Shopify server and let's access the admin API. So let's pass the request object here and we're going to grab a few things. Let me destructure the object and we're going to grab our admin and our session. Okay guys, now let's create the webhook. This webhook is going to be equal to admin. Let's access the admin REST API and type resources right here and webhooks. Okay, so inside here we are going to pass our session, of course. So let's pass this session. So let's type if we have a webhook, if we have a webhook, we are going to do something, and if we don't have a webhook, we're just going to return null. Okay, so inside here again, let's put another console log to make sure everything's working. So let me pass the webhook and let's put a few comments here. Now let's call our webhook and the address, and this is going to be the address of the topic. So we need to specify the topic, and the topic that we are going to create is going to be the customer's create. We also need to specify the format, so let's type webhook.format here, and the format is going to be JSON. Now let's put another console log here, because if we have all these checks, we are going to have a webhook successfully created. And as just for the last part, let's await and save our webhook. Okay, so await webhook.save. Okay guys, hey guys, so I'm going to give you 2 tips to test your webhook if you're having problems setting them up in your store and in your application. Okay, first tip that you can do is just go to your Shopify's partner, and in your application setup, go to this API access and just make sure everything is set up the right way. You have to make sure your scopes are here, and you have to make sure you configure the access request for the specific data that you want to access. So if you want to access customer data, you want to allow the customer data to be accessible from here, just like I did here. I make sure I click everything, all the access scopes are, I just made sure all the access scopes are selected. So that's tip number 1. Just make sure everything looks right from the partner Shopify. That's a good way. You can also go here to the monitor tab, and here you have another way to check and test your webhooks. This is our webhook monitor dashboard. You can check everything. You can check your API health, you can check functions, etc. Okay, the other way is, let's go back to our application. Let me go back here, and actually, yes, let me open a terminal right here, and we just have to make sure our application is running in one terminal. It's running in this terminal, and inside this terminal I'm going to run a command to test my webhooks. So I'm going to click npm run Shopify webhook trigger, which is going to help you test your webhook. Okay, pick up the latest API version. That's what I recommend. Then we're going to pick the endpoint that we chose before, which is customers.create. Choose the delivery method, which is HTTP, and the delivery address is the URL of your application. You can find it on the Shopify partners. It's right here. Just go to the app setup and URLs. You're gonna find this one. So just grab this URL, minimize the browser again. Let's go to our terminal here. Copy and paste this link and type at the end of the URL webhooks, which is the endpoint that is shown in your Shopify server. Okay, so let me just type enter here. And as you guys see, we have a success. The webhook has been in queue for delivery. Now that we are ready here, I want to go to Postman because I want to show you how can you check if we have any webhook installed in our store. Okay, so the way that we do this is that we need two things. We need the name of our shop and our access token. You just have to grab your session and you're going to destructure your session. Okay, so let me show you how. Just destructure the session, and from here you can grab your shop and you can also grab your access token. We're gonna use these two values in Postman in order to hit our store and check the list of webhooks installed in our application. So let me just console the log here and console that like this. Now you have to trigger this function again. I already have these values, but you have to check these values over here in your terminal here. Here's where you're going to display this information. Whenever you're testing something or you're grabbing values from the console, always make sure that you check this terminal, because this function action is actually running in the backend of Remix. Okay, so whatever you console log in here is not going to be displayed in the browser, because that would be the front end. The backend of your application, the server running in your application, it's Remix, right? So it's this part. So you want to make sure you hit this function again. So just go to the form, click this form, and grab these two values, all right? And just check the terminal. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to go ahead to Postman, and here's where you're going to insert your shop. This is the URL. You want to make sure you hit the webhooks, the JSON URL, and you insert your shop right here. This is the value. This is the name of my shop. And now in the headers, just go to header and just insert this value, the X Shopify access token. And here you insert the value. I'm going to do it off screen just for obvious reasons, but this is basically how you do it. So let me show you what happens if we hit the store without the access token. We're going to get we get an invalid API key or access token. So it's an unrecognized login. So let me paste the access token. And what happens if I send the request with our access token is that we see our webhooks installed inside our store, and we only have one webhook, the first one that was installed when we created the application, the uninstalled webhook. Okay, so this is how we are going to test whether our webhooks are working. In my opinion, this one is the easiest way to test webhooks. So now that we know this, let's minimize Postman and let's keep working in our functions. Okay guys, so just same as before, we are going to need to create a form again for our page. So let me import a page from Polaris. We already coded these steps, so we can go ahead, we can go back here and we can grab a few of the values to help us code this a little faster. So let me go here inside my component. I'm going to paste these values, and let's make the necessary import. And inside the page, let's copy and paste this form, and then now let's refactor our page so none of these have to change. Think this is good enough. Let's save the changes. Let me go back to the browser and make sure everything's working correctly. Okay guys, so here in our store we're going to test our webhook now. So let's create our automation. So let me click send and check everything work. I think we had a response, so I'm going to minimize the browser and I'm gonna go to my terminal here, and we had a 200 response from the webhook. Okay, so which is perfect. Now it's working, and I'm gonna go back to my online store. Okay guys, so just go to your online store and let's build the store online. We're gonna need to sign up. So here I don't have a link to go to register, so I just have to type it here, register, and here let's just type anything. Let's just register a user. So this should trigger our webhook, and we should be able to see our webhook in our store. So let me type create and create this user, and yes, we have successfully created an account, because if we go to account here, you can see the account. We don't see the sign in anymore. That's good. Let's go back to the home page, and now let's check everything's working. Let's go back. Let me go back here. Let me go back to my customers, and we have a new customer. Okay, so now let's check our terminal. Let me go back here, and as you guys see, we have a 200 response from our webhook. The webhook has finally been triggered, and you can see this is the payload that we console log and all the information for the new customer that we created. And if I check my email right now, I'm going to see the email that was sent to me from our custom template. Okay guys, so here in my email, let me check my second email. So as you guys see, we have two emails. This was 1 minute ago, so this was the result of our webhook. Let me minimize my browser here and let me show you some other things. Let me show you Postman again, and I'm going to send a request again. And as you guys see, we have registered our new webhook right here. And yeah, that's why this way is really useful to check if everything's working. So let me minimize Postman again. And right now I want to show you something extra from the tutorial, which is how to delete a webhook from an endpoint. So something else I want to show you, let's go back to automations, and here instead of creating a webhook, I want to show you how you can delete the webhook. So we can check Postman again and we'll see that the webhook has disappeared. So that would be the logic to delete the automation. So every time a new user signs up, we won't have an email be sent to that user. So yes, so that's how we can combine all this logic together. So let's just comment all these parts. Let me comment this part as well, and below here I'm going to grab a response which is going to come from the admin again. So let's call the admin, the REST API, the resources, and here it has to be webhooks again, resources.webhook, and we just type delete here, which is going to take an object, and we're going to pass our session inside this object or session, pass the session, and we're missing one more param, which is the ID of the webhook that we want to delete. And which is the ID? So let's just minimize the browser, and I'm gonna go back to my project here. It's this one right here. This is the ID. Copy and paste it. Okay, perfect. And now let's just check our logic. So if we have a response, we're gonna do something, and if we don't, we're just going to return null. So if we have a response, let's just console log the response, and we can return a JSON object with our response. Okay, let's save the document, and yep, that's it. So let's go back to my browser. Let me go back to my browser. So let me minimize my browser, go to Postman because I want to check. We should be able to see that we don't have the webhook anymore. And yes, we only have our one webhook, which is the up and install. So everything seems to be working pretty nice. So let me close Postman. Let's go back to VS Code, and let's keep working in our application.
So in the next part of the application, we're going to work with the billing API from Shopify. I want to show you how the flow from monetization in your applications work in Shopify. So we're going to find a way to implement a subscription model in our application. So we're going to restrict certain parts of our application. So we have two features. We have the campaigns feature and the automations features. Going to put a subscription wall, to say it in these terms, in the automations feature. So the first thing that we have to do is we're going to go to our Shopify server right here, and we're going to set up a couple of things. So just create these two constants on top of your Shopify application server, and you're going to scroll down, and next below here we're going to start with billing, and inside here we're going to inject our billing plan. So we're going to start I'm just showing you the options that we have, but we have basically the monthly and the annual plan. So here we just have to inject this part, and it's going to take an object, and here we have to describe the configuration. So we have an amount property. Let's put a 50. Well, that's too much. Let's just put $5 as the amount. They have to insert the currency code, and the currency code is going to be USD dollars. Then you just have to know these values and the interval, which is going to be the billing interval for 30 days. So, and this interval property is going to be of type the billing interval, and this is going to have and you can see the options here. We have a one-time payment, depending on the usage, And the billing interval object has a few properties here. You can use an annual and every 30 days, which is the one that we're going to use since it's a subscription. So it's the one that makes more sense. If you have more than one type of plan in your application, just copy and paste it. And here you write the configuration. So we also had an annual plan, right? So here in the annual plan is going to be, of course, more expensive. So it would be $50 per year, which is not bad. So yeah, that's about it. You configure everything here. So just like webhooks, you do your configuration in our Shopify server, and then we go to the front end of the application, and I'm going to create two buttons. I'm going to create one for subscription and another one for cancel the subscription. Okay, now let's go, and we're going to paste those buttons in our billing page. All right, so that's the first thing that we're going to do, and we're going to start with the subscription button. So let's create a new file, add that subscription vtn.tsx. We're going to have an action method, so let's export const action, which is going to be of the type action function, this one right here. Let's make it an import type. Okay, and then it's going to be an asynchronous function, asynchronous arrow function. Inside our params is going to take a request object, right? It's right here. All right, so in our prop, we're going to need a few things. So we have to call this submit. We have to create a submit constant, which is going to use our submit hook, right? Submit hook, which comes from Remix. Let's have an action data constant. Action data. Let's call our use action data hook from Remix as well, and then you have to type the type it's a type of action. Okay, so now let's create, you know what, we're going to make this a button. So let's make it a button from Polaris, and we're going to create the function, right? So const star sub is going to be equal to an arrow function, and it's going to take our submit, and inside here just put an object, empty object, and then the rest of the params. Let's replace this to true, replace true, and then the method is going to be a post method. Perfect. So now I think we have to wrap this in a form. Yep, it's true. And here, just below here, let's call the form from Remix. Then grab the form, click on submit, and it's going to be star submit. Okay, we want to see if we have any response here. So let's console log the action data, always for testing, and just action data, so we know what's going on. Let's specify the method here, so post method, and make sure you always configure the action. So we just have to tell Remix which is the path of this file. So it's going to be app, and the cancel, oops, is that a cancel? It's star subscription, right? Yeah, star subscription. Okay, I think that's it. So basically that should take care of our UI. So now we can start working in the logic from our action function. We have to call the authenticate object from the Shopify server. So authenticate, and this is gonna come from the admin, of course, from the admin API. And here, let's destructure our billing object, use it. So let's await billing, hold on, billing the require, oops, not request, the require, And here we're going to pass an object with a few properties, and the first one is going to be the plan. So let's use the monthly plan, right? And we're going to have a property on failure, so we have to do something in case this call fails. So we're just going to try it again, all right? So we're going to call the same object inside. So here is going to take an arrow function, and then let's call the billing API. Let's type request, and it's going to have an object again. Let me grab these, and we're going to put the same properties. So let me specify the plan. So with the test property, we will let know Shopify that it doesn't have to charge us for real, so it's just going to test. So let me save the changes, and now let's go to the billing. I think it's this one right here, right? Yeah, it's the billing page. So let's import a page from Polaris, and here I'm going to, let's go the layout, oops, not label, layout section, this one right here. So yeah, so inside here, let's import the button here, and just paste this part right here, and okay, import everything. That should work. Let's just save the changes. Let me make sure my server hasn't broken yet, and yeah, it's rebuilding the application. Yeah, everything's working. Now let me go back to my browser. So let's test the subscription button. It should take us to, it should redirect us to this page, and it's going to show us a few payment methods right here. Here it provides for us the payment methods for Shopify. We have a credit card and PayPal. So, but since we're testing, we can just click on approve, and our application is going to be in the subscriptions list from our store. So how you check that? It's here in your billing store. Go right here, and you're gonna see that we have our marketing application right here. So now I'm going to show you how do we create a cancel button for the application. Then we're going to wrap our automations page in behind the wall. So if you're not subscribed, you can see the page. So let's close this bar, and let's go back to VS Code. So it's just the same as before. Go to the routes folder, and here I'm going to create another one, which is going to be, let's just name it cancel VTN. The TSX, and we can just go to this part, and we're just going to copy and paste everything and refactor because it's going to be a little similar. We're just going to have an extra logic here, and subscription buttons, let's just rename it to cancel. Oops, cancel VTN. Okay, let's rename this to cancel subscription, and we also have to configure the path, so it's not subscription anymore, it's cancel VTN. Oh yeah, cancel VTN. So just make sure you change the path from your new page, and inside here we're going to use the billing API again. In this part, basically, we're checking if we have a subscription, right? So if we have a subscription, we're going to wrap our subscription in an object. So let's check it. Let's call it billing check. And we're going to use this part right here to grab our subscriptions. So it should be the first one or the last one in the array of subscriptions from the application. So let's call this subscription. Subscription is going to be equal to billing pay. Billing page, control B, the subscriptions, the app so these app subscriptions, and it's going to be the first one. So now below here we're going to cancel the subscription this time, and we're going to have an object, and we have to pass the subscription ID, which you're going to find from here. So type subscription ID and type subscription the ID right here. Now let's just tell this is testing. We're just testing, and then we have to pass the prorate, and we have to pass this property to true. Next, I'm going to just console log again because I want to see what it shows us on the screen. So now we need to wrap this const cancel subscription. So we're going to grab the response from here and paste it right here, cancel subscription, and we're going to check if we have a successful cancel subscription. We're going to console log, first of all, console log or cancel subscription message. And we're going to return this object, right? So let's just return it, this cancel subscription, and if anything fails, we're just going to return null, all right? So Remix is going to give us the message of what fails right here in the action data. So this should take care of everything. So save the changes, and let's go back to the billing page, and I'm going to grab the name of this component again. So cancel subscription, oops, it's not this one. It's the cancel BTN button, this one right here. And let's go below here and import the button. Import the button. Save the changes, and we're going to go back to the store to try to cancel our subscription. We currently have a subscription right now, and I think I haven't mentioned something. Before we do that, let me go to the browser, and I'm going to show you. You need a requirement. Your application needs to be in your Shopify partners. You have to go to your application, and you have to make sure in the distribution tab. So right here in this distribution tab, you have to make sure your application is set as a public application in order for you to have access to the billing API. So you just configure everything here, and you're going to have this information just like you see it in my screen. That's the only requirement to access the billing API. In case you have any errors in the application, if you are going to try this in your own testing application. So yeah, that's the only thing I wanted to tell you. Let's go back to the store, and we should see our cancel button right here. Let's see what happens. We currently have a subscription, so nothing happened. It took us back here, so that means we canceled the subscription successfully. So let me go back to the settings, and we won't see our subscription. See? No subscription anymore. Let me close the model right here. Let me go back to my app. And if I try to cancel the subscription, it's going to take us to the subscription page because we don't have a subscription. So yeah. So that's pretty good. Our logic is working perfectly. So let's cancel everything here. Let me cancel this part. And I'm going to go back to my store because I want to wrap next thing. The next step that we're going to do is we're gonna go here, and we're going to wrap this automations page into our billing thing so we won't see it. So we're going to put a payment wall in this feature. So let me just go back to my browser, and let's work on the logic from here, which is just basically what we did here. In simple terms, to put a subscription wall, you just have to add this logic in. Instead of the action component, we have to add this logic in the loader component inside of automations campaign. So I'm just gonna go here, and it's going to be just do it down here. Let me copy and paste this loader function. You have to do the necessary imports. Just import everything, and below here you just have to, whenever you use just remember, whenever you use this method, you have to use the use loader data hook in order for you to see everything in your component, to see the changes reflected inside the component, right? So let's grab everything in this data object and always display it in your just every time that you test. I'm very used to do this when I'm testing, displaying everything in the console, and console the log. Save the changes, and that should do the trick. This function is going to trigger every time that you load the page. Okay, so and you can do some logic here, just like we did in the cancel subscription. So if we actually have a subscription, just redirect to the same page if we have the subscription, just like we did here. But let me show you now how this is not gonna let us, we don't have a subscription currently, so oops, let's go to the browser, and here, let me scroll, go back to my application. So we currently don't have a subscription, so it's going to take us to the subscription page. Let's go to automations, and as you see, it's loading the subscription paywall. So boom, let's approve it. Let me go to settings here. Let's go here. And yeah, but this is basically how you go about putting subscriptions in your application. So this is a really important step and skill that you should master if you're becoming a Shopify application developer. So hopefully this tutorial gave you an overview how you go about to build an email marketing application with Shopify. So have a great day, and I'll see you in the next tutorial, guys.